There is a cat somewhere in your life, yours or a neighbour's, or one that sits on a wall you walk past. Watch what it does when you call it. Sometimes it comes, sometimes it looks directly at you, holds your gaze for a moment, and then does not come. And you have almost certainly made a joke about this at some point because everybody does. Cats are aloof, cats are ungrateful, cats do not really belong to anyone. You have probably assumed that is just personality, a quirk of the species, something charming and slightly annoying that has no deeper explanation. The real answer is far stranger. Nearly every other animal in your life was taken, captured, penned, bred by people who chose which ones would have offspring and which ones would not, generation after generation, until the animal became something humans had designed. That is not what happened with cats. Cats appear to have walked into human settlements on their own, taken up residence, and domesticated themselves. Nobody selected them. They selected us. And the evidence for that is not a nice story. It is genetics, archaeology, and one grave. Start with what domestication normally looks like because the contrast is the whole point. Take a dog. Somewhere between 15 and 40,000 years ago, depending on which study you read, wolves and humans began a relationship that humans steered hard. People chose which animals to breed. They selected for size, for temperament, for herding, for guarding, for hunting, and eventually for the shape of a face. That is why a Chihuahua and a Great Dane are the same species and look like a mistake. Or take a cow. Cattle were domesticated from the aurochs, the enormous wild ox that once roamed Europe and Asia. Humans made them smaller, calmer, and more productive. The wild original is extinct. What is left is what people built. That is the pattern. A human decides, the animal changes. Now look at a house cat and ask what humans actually changed. It is roughly the same size as its wild ancestor. It has the same skull shape, near enough. It has the same teeth, the same claws, the same hunting behavior, the same solitary instincts, and if you release one into suitable countryside, it will not stand around waiting for a bowl. It will simply resume being a wild animal immediately without needing to relearn anything. You cannot do that with a sheep. Sheep have been altered so thoroughly that many breeds cannot even shed their own fleece without a human to shear them. So the question sharpens. If humans did not build the cat, how did it end up in your house? The genetics gives you the starting point. A large study, led by Carlos Driscoll, working with Stephen O'Brien and colleagues, sampled hundreds of wildcats from across the species range and traced the ancestry of domestic cats. The answer came back narrow. Domestic cats descend from Felis sylvestris libica, the African wildcat, found in the Near East and North Africa, not the European wildcat, not several populations blending together. One subspecies, from one region. Which region matters enormously, because it is the same region where humans first started storing grain. Here is the mechanism, and it is beautifully unglamorous. When people in the Fertile Crescent began farming, they started keeping surplus grain in one place. Grain attracts rodents. Rodents attract predators. A wildcat that could tolerate being close to humans got access to an enormous, reliable, concentrated food supply that no wildcat out in the landscape could match. So the selection pressure was not applied by people, it was applied by the situation. The cats that were slightly bolder, slightly more tolerant of humans nearby, ate better and raised more kittens. The ones that fled at the first sight of a person went back to hunting the hard way. Nobody chose those cats. The granary chose them. That is what self-domestication means. The animal is not selected by a breeder. It is selected by the opportunity. And the trait being selected for is simply the willingness to be near us. But that is a model, and models need evidence. So where is the proof that this actually happened, rather than just being a satisfying explanation? It is in a grave in Cyprus. At a site called Chilurokambos, an archaeologist named Jean-Denis Vigne and his team excavated a human burial dating to roughly 9,500 years ago. Beside the human, in its own small pit, about 40 centimeters away, was a cat. Complete. Deliberately placed. Oriented the same way as the person. Now, Cyprus is an island. It has no native wildcat population. Cats did not swim there. Somebody put that cat on a boat. Think about what has to be true for that to happen. 9,500 years ago, somebody valued a cat enough to carry it across open water to an island, and somebody later valued one enough to bury it alongside a human being. That is not vermin control. That is relationship, and it is thousands of years earlier than anyone expected when the site was first dug. And yet, even then, the cat was still a wildcat by every anatomical measure. That is the strangeness at the center of this. The relationship is ancient. The animal barely changed. For a long time, the assumption was that Egypt was the origin point, because the Egyptian evidence is so visible. Wall paintings, mummified cats in enormous numbers, a goddess with a cat's head. But the Cyprus burial predates the Egyptian material by thousands of years, and the genetics points to a Near Eastern origin. A later study led by Claudio Ottoni traced ancient cat DNA across time and found that Egyptian cats spread widely and successfully later on, carried along trade routes and shipping lanes. Egypt was not the beginning. Egypt was the amplifier. Which brings you to the twist, and it changes what the animal in your house actually is. Every other domestic species in your life was shaped by people who wanted something specific from it. Milk, wool, meat, muscle, obedience. Each one is a tool that was designed, and the design is written all over its body. The cat was not designed. It was permitted. It is essentially a wild animal that found a niche, and the niche happened to be us. Its indifference is not a personality quirk layered on top of domestication. It is the original condition, still intact, because nothing ever bred it out. When a cat ignores you, it is not being rude. It is being exactly what it has always been. The relationship was never built on obedience, because obedience was never the price of entry, which is worth sitting with, because it inverts something you probably believe about yourself. You tend to assume that the things in your life are there because you chose them. Your habits, your city, your work, the people around you. Chosen, selected, decided. Most of it was not. Most of it was an opportunity that appeared, and you were the kind of person who happened to tolerate it, and so you stayed, and it became your life. Nobody designed it. A situation selected for you, exactly the way a granary full of mice selected for a slightly bolder wildcat. There is a cat somewhere in your life, yours or a neighbor's, or one on a wall you walk past. It was never tamed. It just decided we were worth living near, and it has never once pretended otherwise.